Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar, which is about the Canada Disability Benefit, the budget from reaction to action. My name is Michelle Hewitt. I'm the chair of Disability Without Poverty, and along with Rabia Khader, who is the National Director of Disability Without Poverty, we will be your hosts for today's events. Before we begin the webinar, I'm going to go over our accessibility components and the agenda for today. We fully acknowledge that the Zoom platform isn't fully accessible to every disabled person. We do our very best to build in the accommodation features that are available to us, like ASL, LSQ, and French language interpretation. The chat has been disabled to accommodate presenters and people with vision loss, which can be very distracting. If you have any concerns, please send us an email at hello@disabilitywithoutpoverty.ca. If you're experiencing technical difficulties, you will be able to send a chat message to the hosts and panelists who will get back to you. However, offensive language, aggressive behavior, and abuse of any kind will not be tolerated in the chat function. We expect everyone to use respectful language, and we welcome constructive criticism. Discriminatory, offensive, and abusive language will result in the individuals being removed from the webinar. For all questions that you have for us, please put those in the Q&A box, usually at the bottom of your screen. We'd greatly encourage you to share your questions, as we'll be responding to as many as we can live during our conversation today. Our meeting today features simultaneous French and English translation, LSQ and ASL interpretation, French and English captioning. Please take a moment to adjust your settings as appropriate. First, please select your preferred language, English or French. You do this by selecting the interpretation option on your Zoom menu. Once you select this option, you will not need to change the language settings again during the presentation. You must select a language, even if you want to hear this presentation in English. If you're using a mobile device, such as a phone or tablet, you can find the language interpretation options under More. For those who require ASL or LSQ interpretation, we will be spotlighting those components throughout the presentation. No need to do anything, they will automatically remain on your screen. To enable captions, select the Captions option on your Zoom menu. If you would like to adjust the size and placement of these captions, you will need to go into your Zoom accessibility settings. For those of you who would like to access French captions for the event today, please click on the link that has been put in the webinar chat box to access these online. If we can support you through the presentation, please send us a message in the chat box and someone will assist you with any technical issues that you have. For any additional settings, please go to your personal Zoom account settings or your in-webinar audio settings for more customization. So, to summarize our accessibility options, please select your language using the interpretation option, enable captions if required, and finally, make sure you share your questions for us in the Q&A box. Our team members, who I want to thank so gratefully for everything they do in every of these webinars, from the people behind the scenes that make sure this one runs so smoothly, to our captioners, our ASL and LSQ interpreters. Thank you so much. All of those team members are on hand to help you with any technical difficulties you may be experiencing. I just need to switch over a little bit. Hold on a moment. So, I'm coming to you from Kelowna, BC, which is on the unceded and ancestral lands of the Okanagan Syilx people, whose land I am very grateful to live here as an uninvited settler. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Rabia Khader, who is going to give our full land acknowledgement that she does so beautifully every time.
Thank you, Michelle. We honor the land that we live on, that we occupy. We are very grateful to the original inhabitants of Turtle Island, the ancestors who have protected and preserved this land. We are committed to truth, reconciliation, and disability justice. In the spirit of social justice and disability justice and equity for everyone. I am talking to you from the traditional territories, most recently of the Mississaugas of the New Credit in Mississauga, Ontario. And I'm very grateful to be here in this virtual space today with everyone that is able to join us or that will tune into this conversation. Thank you, Michelle.
Hey Rabia, somebody just asked me to turn my ceiling fan off, so I am just seeing if I can get to the end of. Okay, I didn't realize it. Yeah, because you can see it in the mirror behind me. There we go. So just getting back into my seat. There we go. Hopefully that's better for everybody now. I'm sorry about that. It's just slowly coming to a stop behind me. So here we are, Rabia. Oh, and there goes Leo. Now I moved. I have a service dog called Leo who is in his crate with a new bone, but now I moved around the room. He decided to join in as well. So my apologies for all of the real life situations going on around me. And there he is. So here we are, Rabia, talking about reaction to action with the Canada Disability Benefit and the budget. And I realized that I've actually got the top on when we found that I was wearing the day we found out about the budget. So I think we can go back and explain where you and I were. We were in something called the federal lockup, which we've never been to before, and sounds something really kind of fancy, but it's a load of people in a room, and the only refreshments were coffee and water, and they ran out of coffee, and I think they ran out of water eventually as well. So not very fancy. 3 hours, no Wi-Fi, and for the first 5 minutes of the 3 hours, we got the news. How did it feel, Rabia?
Well, we were in exclusive space. It wasn't very diverse. It didn't include people with disabilities. We can probably bet that we were the only two people with a visible disability in the room. What do you think, Michelle?
Yeah, there was somebody
three.
else. Yeah, there was somebody else that was with us that was of a visible
a couple of other
disability,
people.
but yeah,
a couple of other
but probably
people, and that's about it.
500 people in the room, and probably 5 people with disabilities that were visible disabilities that we would know of, and certainly as a racial minority, Rabia, yeah, again, probably 5. So lots
And
of
that
soup.
certainly does not make up us as the hashtag we are the 27%.
Definitely not. So then we went through a few little technical blips, particularly I don't think they'd had somebody using a screen reader in the room before, and we get the budget on a little thumb drive, and we finally managed to get it to work for you, and we open it and we read it. Reaction, Rabia?
Oh, we were prepared for, holding our breath, right? Like we were prepared not to expect the sun and the moon. But we really were not prepared to be deeply as disappointed as we were. We thought we had built up momentum, built our case, done our part of convincing as disabled people, organizations, allies, supporters across this country, across Turtle Island from sea to sea to sea. We thought we did our part in convincing the finance minister through our Budget the Benefit campaign, through all the efforts of the disability community and other supporting organizations and allies, saying that this budget had to be adequate or at least a good place to start. So our first reaction to the amount was shock. I think that's the word I'm looking for. Disappointment, anger, frustration, uh, feeling abandoned, ignored, devalued, upset, heartbroken.
And just to be clear, what we're
And
talking about here, the amount was
yes,
a maximum of $2,400 a year, which is $200 a month. And people have done the math that it's basically $6 a day. And I hear people saying, "Oh, it's like a cup of coffee a day," but to people living in poverty, they're not going to spend it. I know we're making comparisons there, but I really, those type of comparisons don't sit well with me because, you know, if only, well, many people can't afford a $6 coffee a day, but disabled people living in poverty, it just doesn't, it's just not what they happens. And, so the way for me, I think of it is, if you imagine it's summertime, we're at the beach, and you've got some people who their life is all, on a fancy recliner with waiters bringing them drinks and all the rest of it, and perhaps in a special enclosed area to swim in. And then there are other people who are just in the regular sea, and sometimes the waves come and hit them and kind of take them out a bit. But then there are other people that are drowning. And, before this budget announcement, you can say that when we look at where the poverty line is and how much people get on the various disability assistances, most people are $1,000 below, right? So that, they're sinking $1,000 below the surface. And now they're sinking $800 below the surface. Does that really make it any better? It's like, I know it's a start. I know, we've been on this journey together, Rabia, you and I, and 4 years ago that, it was just a dream and that there was going to be something, and there is something, but oh God, man, it's just not what we'd hoped for.
it's not what we pushed for. It didn't reflect our principles that we have been committed to from the onset, principles that shone through our consultation process, through the Shape the CDB initiative in our Disability with Possibility report, our 7 core principles. Those are the principles that we will continue with because this definitely, the amount didn't meet our expectation, nor did the eligibility criteria, the whole process, because they also, as expected, and this is something we expected and we knew we would have to do a lot of work on, the eligibility is tied to the disability tax credit that we will talk further about momentarily. But they made the budget sound amazing. Like they said, $6.1 million or so budgeted, but over 6 years. So that is the absolute minimum. We were expecting them to take on at least the lowest of the amounts models proposed in the PBO report, in the Parliamentary Budget Officer's report to Parliament. And yet they chose to just offer a minimal budget. And we can keep talking about the budget, but the bottom line is it's um, far too little for far few people who will actually qualify. It is a starting point. Once we were able to get over the shock and awe effect and and a lot of the negativity that was even directed at us because people felt that we settled for this amount and we had nothing to do with this amount. We were invited into a space that many people are invited into just a couple of hours before the budget becomes public. The ink has already been dry on it for days. They don't tell us what that number is, and they decide to give us a preview so we can go out there and brag about it when they make it public. We had nothing much to brag about. We
So,
actually had a lot to say about the disappointment, but upon reflection, once we settled in with the reality, we recognized that we have a starting point. So there was a promise made in September 2020. Through a lot of ups and downs of tabling a bill and going, uh, that bill dying on the order paper because of an election and pushing for a bill to be introduced again and all the work that went along with that, full circle last year, getting legislation unanimously passed, pushing for it to be budgeted. Here's the budget. We're not happy with it, but the basic commitment has been honored. We have the law and we have a budget. We have a lot more work to do because now the regulation process is going to start. And the regulation process is really, really important that we will talk further about because
yeah.
that's where we can talk about the language around the amount, talk about the language around eligibility, and really engage. So I don't
So,
want to go too far into that, but I just
yeah,
thought I'd lay that out there, Michelle.
perfect. Thanks, Rabia. So I just want to go back to that eligibility piece because there's a number of things I think it's really important to talk about today. So, no surprise to anybody, the government said that the eligibility that they were using is something called the disability tax credit. And the disability tax credit is something that is designed to give tax credits back to people who pay taxes for disability related expenses. So it's not something that's designed for people who live in deep poverty because they don't pay taxes, right? And it's also something that is complicated to get, that requires multiple steps, requires a medical professional to fill in a form that then gets sent off to the CRA, where multiple things can go wrong there, and then sometimes people are given it temporarily and have to reapply it, and all kinds of things. So there's a few things that I really want to cover today that are really important to me. So first of all, the government said in the budget that they are going to pay medical professionals to fill the form in, or doctors, I don't remember the exact language, which is tough because many people, I'm in BC and there are a million people without a doctor, and it's not, the forms have to be filled in by somebody who is knowledgeable of your medical history. So, you can't pay something that you don't have. As soon as this came out, I started to see people on social media say, so can I go get this done, and how do I claim for the doctor to fill the form in? I want to say right here now, do not pay out money on the expectation that you're going to get it refunded. We do not know what that process is yet. As Rabia mentioned, and we're going to talk about in more detail, there is a process called regulations coming that is going to set all of that out. And most likely it's going to be some kind of process where the medical professional gets reimbursed directly. You're not going to have to pay out. There's going to be something else that happens. So first of all, please do not put yourself in further financial jeopardy by paying for something because you think that you're going to get the money out. The second is, and the most insidious thing, in the days after, we started to see scams relating to, we can do this for you, just pay us this amount of money, and we will get your medical done, and we will get your disability tax credit done. Please be very careful on anything you read from anybody that is saying that they are going to get your disability tax credit done for you. That is not something that we can say that we can trust and that we can put out there. So So that's I think that's for me that is one of the biggest things to get out there is that just because it says in the budget that the medical is going to be paid for does not mean that that means they will pay you if you go get a medical now to start the process. You need to hang on until we find out what that process is going to be. So the next thing is there's a little bit of fantastical mathematics going on by the government. So at the moment, we think this number isn't easy to find. We think that there are 300,000 people in the age range that would be able to get the Canada Disability benefit that are currently getting disability tax credit. So we think there are 300,000, and the government kind of thinks that as well. They think that they're going to be able to double that number to 600,000. So whenever you hear in news releases at the moment that at least 600,000 people are going to get this new Canada Disability benefit, that's where it comes from. That's what they're doing. So paying doctors does not mean that we're all of a sudden going to be able to double that. However, there are at least 1.5 million working aged disabled people who should be eligible for the Canada Disability benefit. And that's the issue that we have, that we are leaving behind with this, even at the best. See, even Leo doesn't agree with it. Even with the absolute best that the government is saying that we're going to do, we are still leaving behind 1 million disabled people. So I'm going to pass on to Rabia for a moment just to see if Leo will calm down and not join in so much. So Rabia, are there things to do with the disability tax credit you want to talk about? Or do you want to move on to what we think, sorry, not just you, what we think the regulation process is going to be?
Well, we know the DTC is flawed. As Michelle cautioned, beware of scams. There are people working on helping folks out there understand the process and support the application process. Um, if even if you don't think you might, even if you think you may not qualify for the Canada Disability Benefit, it is really important that you get on to the DTC or folks that are supporting folks out there. Make sure that every disabled person actually applies for the disability tax credit. It is really, really important. I don't want people out there going and paying fees. We haven't figured out, that side of the equation of how government is going to be paying doctors to do this. But, whatever you can do, make plans to make that application because there are benefits to being having the disability tax credit available um, and filing taxes. So just please learn more about it, make a plan to get onto it. There's no mad rush because this benefit is not going to roll out anytime soon. We know that they're kind of anticipating rolling it out by next summer. This ties into the regulations process. So what we are expecting to happen, because so here it is, nothing can happen with this budgeted amount or the legislation until there are regulations. Regulations determine the details, how things are going to happen, how they're going to be managed and administered and implemented. And there's a lot of work to be done around that. We are assuming that government, that public service, that the bureaucracy has a set of regulations drafted. They kind of have a sense of what needs to be done. They have a sense of what they've heard through their consultations and through advocacy efforts and yada yada yada. And from a system perspective, they have some working document. That working document we are expecting to be made public very soon, either this month or next month. The legislation is expected to come into force. They have not done that yet. And the last day they have to bring the legislation into force is June 22nd. So in a few weeks, in less than 3 weeks, they have to bring the Canada Disability Benefit Act into force, which then triggers a 12-month clock to create and implement the regulations. So there are a few things that can happen given politics and given the looming election of 2025. An election can be called any time, and the unfortunate reality is that we have not much to say about it. That's just the political wind and powers that determine when it is strategic to trigger an election. So right now, what we have is the legislation coming into force. The system needs to put the regulations out. So they are going to put out the pre-regulations. So very, very draft regulations out for our feedback, for comments from the public. It is really important that we communicate in common language what our viewpoints are, what our voices are in the regulations, so that what gets in there today does not become the maximum and absolute of tomorrow. Today, we have a parliament that unanimously supported the Canada Disability Benefit. We may not have a parliament that's as unanimous in its spirit of democracy to support us. We have a lot of work to do going forward. And that begins with making sure that what we value is reflected in the regulations in language that gives that room for this benefit to grow and expand its eligibility.
So, Rabia, what we're expecting in the short term, on or before June the 22nd, is this thing called being brought into force.
Yep.
And what we are hearing is that we're expecting there to be draft regulations brought out, and that people will be given an opportunity to comment. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to get Leo out of his crate because he is not having a happy morning. And we are going to prepare to help people to respond to that, right? We're going to do what we can to let people know what to do. Back to you for a moment, Rabia, while I just get him out of his crate.
Yeah, so knowing what to do goes back to our 7 principles. It goes back to what we heard from disabled people and carers or caregivers, about 5,000 of all of us out there, gave us very common values and principles around the urgency, around the eligibility, around the accessibility, around the amount, etc., etc. And that information is available in our disability with possibility report. So as things move forward, as we learn more about the process, like we did in collaboration with others previously, we will provide a sample response that can help people give input on those draft regulations. The work around draft regulations is one piece of it. There's a lot of other work still to do. Actually, we thought we were going to, settle in and take it easy and have less work to do. We have even more work to do as disabled people, as disability without poverty, as friends and allies and organizations serving people with disabilities out there. We have even more work to do now to make sure that these regulations reflect our values and principles, and that any future change in government reflects our values and principles, that we build new alliances while maintaining old alliances. So not only do we work on giving input to the system, we also have a lot of political educating to do as political hopefuls running in elections next year carve out their platforms and their promises to various people. And
So,
we
so
are one of
Rabia,
those stakeholder groups.
yeah, so I just want to stick with, so we are going to have the draft regulations are going to come out, and we are going to, and at that point, everybody in the country will be invited to give their input. And we will be making sure that we will support people in giving that input because, as you said, we have a number of priorities of our own that we will that we will help people work through that have come out of the Shape CDB report that over 4,000 people took part in, and so we know that the opinions that we are giving are not ours, our personal Michelle and Rabia opinions. They are the opinions that have been shared with us over time. After that, the government takes those away, hopefully listens, and then comes out with something called Gazette One. And that's another opportunity for people to then say, yep, like this bit, don't like that bit. This is, there's another feedback loop. So for the next year, it is absolutely vital that we use every avenue that is given to us to give this feedback. I strongly believe that if the government asks you a question, you answer it, because otherwise, they can't say, that they haven't been told, right? Because it's all on the record, it's all there, it's all part of public record. So those are things that we're going to do. But as Rabia just said, here we are again, and it's summertime. And every year, Rabia and I, since we've been doing this with the Disability Without Poverty and the Canada Disability Benefit, have been thinking, okay, so it's time for us to kind of, in the summer, maybe we can slow down a bit, relax. And every summer, it feels like things are ramping up even more. And what's really important over the summer is that we know that MPs are no longer in Parliament, that they're all back in their constituencies. And we know that they like to get out to whatever fairs it is in their community and so on, and to be seen and to be heard. And here in BC, we have a provincial election coming up, so that candidates will also be out there as well as people who are currently in the positions. And so, for example, here it's Pride in Kelowna this week, and next Saturday is the Pride march, market, and all of those things that we do here. And I'm going to make sure that I have with me a copy of our 7 priorities, multiple copies. And every politician that I come across, I'm going to say, here, please take this with you. Get in touch with me if you'd like to talk about it some more. So that is, that those are the things that we need to be doing right now. One is responding when it happens to that government regulation piece, and the other is making every opportunity that we absolutely have to talk to our elected officials. Rabia, is there more about that I've missed that you'd like to talk to?
Well, I'm just gonna just go back and highlight, stay tuned around the DTC to the Disability Alliance British Columbia, DABC, because they're gonna have some revamped information available, to Plan Institute, because they're gonna have some information available on the Canada Disability Benefit, Phonotonome for those in Quebec, uh, services in French around the Canada Disability Benefit, the Disability Tax Credit, etc. And Prosper Canada will be building out something as well around benefits navigation and the Canada Disability Benefit. And of course, we will always have updates for you around what is happening through our various channels and modes of communicating with you. With regards to next steps now, we're always here to give support and advice in the process, as Michelle said. Um, in terms of, improving the benefit, there is a campaign going on and parliamentary e-petition by our friend and ally MP Mike Morris from the Green Party called Fix the Benefit. we are launching our Better the Benefit campaign. As Michelle said, it is so, so important to get to know your elected officials, to take every opportunity to talk to them. We will provide some resources for you to do that through our website, to support your network of people out there, to have those conversations. So stay tuned to our website for that. And that's essentially the Better the Benefit campaign. We need disabled people taking action. We need service providers taking action. We need advocates taking action. And we will give you the information and resources that you need, but you are the expert. You have the lived experience. You know what you need. You have a story to tell. And summertime is the best time to tell those stories to your elected officials at the federal, so MPs, members of parliament, very important to talk to them. Also very important to talk to anybody in elected office or anybody you know in a position of power, to bring them on board as an ally. Not only do you need to talk to federally elected officials from all parties, you need to talk to provincial uh, MPPs or MLAs. So your members of the Legislative Assembly of your province or your members of provincial parliament. It's also important to talk to your city mayor if you have a good relationship with them, and tell them what you need out of the Canada Disability Benefit, because what's there now is not going to meet your need or meet the need of people that you care about living in poverty.
So I think, Rabia, I think you really touched on something important there. Where we keep saying that, we will put things out to help you. What we mean is, for some of you, this might be the first time that you've replied to a government questionnaire, or really spoken out about something, and that can be a bit nerve-wracking. And so if you're not sure what to write, or you'd like some help, that's why we're providing assistance. However, as Rabia said, your stories are the most crucial. You know what you need. You know what needs to be said. You know what your story is and what your lived experience is. So please don't think that what we're saying here today is that you need to tell them what we say. That's not what we mean at all. All we mean is we're offering assistance to people who feel they need it, and everybody who has a story to tell and is comfortable telling their story, please do that. Rabia, we have a lot of questions coming in, and I kind of want to switch to some of them. There are some that I can deal with quite quickly, and there are others that perhaps we should talk about a little more, a little longer. So we've been asked, will this replace CPPD? CPP, no, not at all. But that's a benefit in its own right. That is like an insurance that you've paid into. Will it be federal? Yes, this is a federal benefit. If so, will it be deducted from income assistance, PWD, and all the rest of it? So that brings us on to the question of clawbacks, Rabia, which we haven't talked about yet today, and why it's important to talk to our provincial counterparts. Would you like to talk about that for a little bit, Rabia?
Absolutely. So at DWP, we are actively working in British Columbia through Amanda and our team on the ground there. And Michelle also happens to reside in British Columbia as our chair. We are actively working in Alberta through our team there, Dawn and Jan. We are actively working in Ontario through Lisa and Janet. We are continuing to collaborate and work in Quebec through Amy and our other co-chair, um, Luca Patuelli, and some folks that have been connected to us, like Elizabeth, one of our key leaders out there, um, and reaching out to other provinces as well, like Manitoba and uh, uh, Nova Scotia, and across the whole country, building relationships, talking to people, and encouraging everybody to talk to their elected officials provincially because provinces have a very important role to play. We want this benefit harmonized. We do not want any consequential mishap that impacts anything that you're accessing provincially in terms of income support, in terms of other programs, subsidies for housing, subsidies for assistive devices, for transportation, for dental, medical, et cetera, et cetera. We don't want those impacted because suddenly you are deemed eligible for $200 a month, up to $200 a month. We don't want that taken away. We need provinces and the federal government to cooperate with each other and make this benefit a true top up that it's intended to be. And the only way that's going to happen is that we, as disabled people, you and you and you and me, continue talking to everybody, telling your story to everybody. If they don't know, they make the wrong decision. And they will say they didn't know.
So I just
That will
want
be
to
their excuse.
I want to talk about a little bit about how this sits across the country because, you know, if you're here in BC and Leo is now chewing a bone, just so you all know what that noise is in the background. If you're in BC, the provincial government already puts in like $1,400 and $1,458. If you're in Alberta on H, it's something like $1,700, $1,800. And so then when the federal government said, and now we expect the provinces to step up and do their piece, it was like, wait a minute, like that's a much bigger chunk of change than $200. But you look across the country, and I will talk about our dear friends in New Brunswick again. They they're really struggling. They've been on like $800 for a long time. So $200 in New Brunswick is a quarter of the amount. It's a massive change. So whereas we think different amounts all over the place, we see this message saying, please, provinces need to step up. Many provinces have been stepping up and doing a lot of the work for a lot of the time. However, somebody has asked, is this $200 on top of what most of us get already? Will some people get less? It's also confusing. Damn straight, it's confusing. So it says a maximum $2,400, a maximum of $200. And we don't know how that's going to happen. I mean, we know that, some of you are able to work. And so some of you are able to work but are on low income. Some of you work a few hours that gets added on top of your disability assistance, be it AISH or ODSP or whatever it's called where you live. And there will be some sort of scale at the top of that will say, up until this amount, you get the $200, and after that, it starts to trail off. That's the sort of thing that will be worked out in this piece that Rabia was talking about called regulations. That's what we have to talk to people about. That's what we have to tell them, that where the levels need to be and how they need to be, like, far higher than the poverty line, because when people change from one benefit system to the other, or when things get taken away, people end up a lot worse off. So, we don't know. We don't know how that's going to work yet, because, as we say, that's at the piece that's coming up. The devil is in the details, and we haven't met the devil yet. So I think it's really important that we keep all of those pieces in mind. Somebody says, I was in a CRA webinar last week where they said the DTC credit can be claimed by a supporting family member who does have a taxable income. Yeah. And, do you have any information how easy, how hard this is? So the disabled person, be it a child or an adult, is awarded as somebody who is able to get the disability tax credit. And as somebody had mentioned, the disability tax credit is becoming a bit of a gateway. It can get you RDSP, the Registered Disability Savings Plan. It's the access for that. It's the access to dental for disabled people, and there's a couple of other benefits as well. So, as flawed as it is, it's also being used as a gateway to a number of other things. So, we're kind of stuck with what we've got, right? But we recognize that it's not very successful. So, one of the problems that we have here is that the CRA cannot tell us how many people are low income and have the disability tax credit because, for example, I could have the disability tax credit and be low income, but my husband, he could be the one that claims it on his taxes because of the way taxes work and the way that you can switch benefit from another. Or if your child is disabled, right, and your child is somebody who has been awarded the disability tax credit, you as the parent can claim it on their behalf. So the government, when they said, oh, 300,000 that we're going to double to 600,000, they didn't think about any of this. They didn't realize that they don't actually know low how many low income people are recipients of a disability tax credit certificate. So I know that's really getting into the weeds and it's very complicated, but it's why we have to keep talking about all of these things. And what if the answer to that for us is very straightforward. If you have already jumped through a hoop, if you have already got a provincial or another federal disability assistance payment, so you have already got ODSP or PWD in BC or AISH or CPPD, all of these acronyms, I know, letters everywhere. So if you have already received one of those, then that should make you automatically eligible for this. You shouldn't have to fill in another form and do another medical and all the rest of it. The information should just be automatically shared. And that's one of the pieces that we are working hard with our provincial partners. That's one of the things that we really do have going on at the moment. So, again, there's another conversation to have with your MP and say, I really don't like the DTC. I don't want to get into the details of it all. Let me give you a solution. Make people automatically eligible. The conversation is as easy as that. So, I really, I really urge you to have those conversations over this summer. That as you meet politicians out in the many different places that you may go, and that they may see you. Okay, I'm going to keep looking for I'm going to keep looking for a question. Matthew Wright said maybe Leo should be in charge instead of the Liberals. I can just say that if Leo really should be in charge of everything. Is there a risk? Dana is asking, if you apply for DTC and receive it, it could affect your provincial disability benefits. No, because it's a tax refund, right? So those two things don't touch each other. So the bigger thing that happens is that you apply for it and you don't actually get a tax credit because you don't pay taxes, right? That's why people that live in poverty don't apply for it, because it's long, complicated, has a high rate of failure. There is only 40% of people who are currently DTC recipients that should be. I'm sure.
So maybe
Go on,
maybe
Rabia.
Michelle, I can just
Yeah,
jump in here for a
yeah.
second. What I was going to say is the disability tax credit is, like Michelle said, it's a good thing because it's an avenue to some other programs. It's also good for people who are earning income, whether the individual with a disability or their partner or family member or caregiver, that if they're not working, claims them as a dependent and gets that disability tax credit. So it's literally a credit which reduces the amount of tax you pay on your earnings. So when you file your income tax, You have this tax credit that kind of recognizes that living with a disability costs a little bit more. So they're going to give you a little bit of a break on your taxes. But really, it only benefits you if you have enough earnings as an individual or a family filing taxes. So it is a good thing to have. It is useful, whether regardless of its flaws, it's there, and it's the mechanism that the system knows how to use to get any kind of benefits federally out to disabled people.
So, Rabia, one of the questions which perhaps leads us into the end, and I meant to have this open in front of me and I haven't, so I am just frantically clicking on my screen. Somebody asked, what are our 7 priorities? Your memory is so much better than mine. Can you rattle off the seven
I might
priorities?
I might miss a few, so maybe I'll rattle while you're looking. Urgency, that this needs to be immediate, no more delay. People's lives are at stake. There are disabled people out there considering, their legal right to die because they don't have enough financial resources to live. So this is really, really urgent. People are going into deeper and deeper and deeper poverty. There's the eligibility piece, that the eligibility needs to be broader. It needs to include invisible disabilities, episodic disabilities. Right now, the definition tied to the disability tax credit it is very medicalized and restricted. And oftentimes, people with mental illness, people with episodic disabilities, people with, um, chronic fatigue, et cetera, have to jump through so many medical hoops even to qualify. It's not just doing the application, or somebody's passing judgment that their disablement isn't severe enough for them to deserve, quote unquote, the
So
disability
I
tax
have the
credit.
list. So you did urgency, you did inclusive eligibility, you did simpler application. Did you do that?
Yes.
Was that? Yeah. Dignity, massive one, right? We are not scroungers. We are not, trying to bilk the system for something. One of the things that in our shape report, one of the comments that somebody gave that has stuck with me ever since is that when one of the things, what would you like to tell the minister, was that we are honest people. Oh my goodness. Like, the thought that somebody, that we feel we need to tell people. Yeah. Next one, added costs. Do you want to talk about that, Rabia?
People with disabilities have income supports that are 30% below the poverty line, whereas their cost of living with a disability, it's substantially higher. It's at least 30% more. So we've said, $1,000 below the poverty line, potentially $1,000 above the poverty line is the disability poverty line. So there needs to be a recognition that it costs more to live with a disability. It's not just our assistive devices, it's not just the supports we need, but because we face barriers, because the way society is designed, we don't have the luxury to go hop in our car necessarily. Like some of us, many of us can't drive or afford a car. We can't just hop in a car and go grab, the cheapest bread from this place and the cheapest, coffee from that place, or bananas for the other place. We can't pinch our pennies that way. It costs us more. We have to take advantage of the support that we have when we have it and do one stop shopping, or we do online shopping. That's an example to use. It costs more to shop online. It shops more to get things delivered to you that are bare necessities. It could be as basic as, we need Tylenol to pain manage. It's not covered as a prescription drug, right? When it's over the counter. Um, so there are added costs to living with a disability that
So
need to be recognized.
so we have two of these left on the list, Rabia, and we have 5 minutes. I know we have to sort of run into our final moments of this. One is a fair benefit. I think that's pretty straightforward. We are decent, fair people, and we want a fair shake at the can, right? We want to be able to live with dignity, autonomy, and independence, and we want a benefit that reaches the people it's meant to reach. And as we said, we have you know the government is proud of itself. I'm sorry, I shouldn't smile because it's not funny at all. The government is proud that it's going to reach 600,000 people, which leaves over 1 million people behind, and that is just criminally wrong. So this benefit should go to, it should benefit everybody that deserves to be benefited by it, not this number that they think to. And then the last part, one, Rabia, which kind of leads us into where we're at, is keep disabled people involved. And I think that that's been one of our themes for the whole of this webinar. Do you want to just,
And that's why, yeah, and that's why it's essential to make sure our views, opinions, voices are seen and heard by decision makers, by our elected officials. We need to participate in the process and go above and beyond the process to be heard. So there's the process of feedback on the draft regulations that you will need to tune to know when and how to participate. And then there's the conversations that you need to have, whether it's writing an email to your MP or MPP or MLA or locally elected city councilor or mayor, whoever you have a relationship with that is politically responsible for the well-being of their residents. You need to talk to them about what you need, what your loved one needs, what your friend, community member, person you support with a disability living in poverty needs. So tell your story. Tell the story of those that you know and care about to people in power so that they can make informed decisions and they can't say that they didn't know better. Better the benefit. That's our campaign.
better the
Hashtag
benefit?
better the benefit. Hashtag end disability poverty. Hashtag disability with possibility. Hashtag we are the 27%.
So I just want to move into the final part of this, and I just before we get to the end, I want to once there is Leo tell I'm so sorry. This can you believe my service dog is just he's having a moment. He is a dog, and that's we have a button that he presses and it tells him he's a good boy, and he's just decided to tell you all he's a good boy. So aside from my dog being a good boy, I would like to once again really thank the technical group staff behind here for everything that they've done to keep this smooth running. I would like to thank our support that we get to make us at Disability Without Poverty to be able to do these things, from the Maitrey Foundation, McConnell Foundation, Vancouver Foundation, the Calgary Foundation, Hamilton Foundation, Toronto Foundation. Rabia, have I missed anybody?
You have covered everybody.
Okay. I thank you all for the questions that you've been sending in. And I'm going to ask Liz and one of the technical people back there, could you please make sure that that we get all of these questions, and that we use them to build documents that we write in the future and that as we write to politicians. And we would like to say to you, thank you for being here. Stay connected. Sign up at disabilitywithoutpoverty.ca. Follow us on Twitter, or X as it's called, or Facebook or Instagram, and write to us at hello@disabilitywithoutpoverty.ca. I thank you so much for your time.
One last little infomercial is those of you tuning in who are a part of our community labs, actively participate. Let's build that online community, folks, because it is going to take community and society to better the benefit. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. And we will see you next time when Leo will be so much more better behaved. Thank you, everyone.
And thank you to the DWP team.
Oh, absolutely. How did I not say that? Thank you.